'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Yes, we're focusing a little bit on the home front on Sunday mornings. Good Sunday morning, by the way. Today on the home front, pesky pests. Have you got any? That like living at your place, you'd really rather that they moved on. Possums, for instance. They wake you up with their footsteps on the roof, or worse, when they fight. It's an awful noise, isn't it? You wake up in a terrible fright, and yet they're native and can be quite gorgeous little animals. You can't knock them down like you would a fly. You're not allowed to trap them, let alone anything else. So how can you solve your possum problem and other things that go bump in the night as well? We have a pest man to answer some of these things this morning. You might have a question too for Dr. Phil Ridley, who calls himself a bug doctor. He's also got a PhD in entomology. Ever had a possum problem at your place? What did you do to stop them taking over your house, whether it's just the pitter-pattering, that noise in the night that keeps you awake, wakes you up in a fright? It might be the fighting. Gee, they can be noisy, can't they, when they have a Barney? Doing it within the confines of the law is a very different situation to how it probably once was when traps were commonplace. Poison, of course, but possums, native animals, you can't do that. What can you do in the way of moving them out, moving them on? Dr. Phil Ridley is from bugdoctormedia.com.au, and he has a PhD in entomology, been working in the area of pest control for 20 years or so. And I thought on the home front, he might have some valuable advice that we could sap from him. Good morning, Dr. Ridley.
Yeah, good morning.
Possums, let's start there. Look, traps and poisoning possums was quite common in the past. I know these days you might cringe to hear that. It's against the law, but the facts are that's the way they were controlled an awful lot in generations gone by.
Yeah, look, that's right. Poisoning is definitely out. But you can still trap possums, but there are strict rules about how you can go about that.
Right. What are the rules? What can you do?
Well, look, as you said there, they are native animals, and if you harm them in any way, or indeed trap them without a licence, you can have a fine of up to $11,000, or indeed up to 6 months in prison. So you do need to follow the rules and regulations. The good news is there's pretty much a manual on how to get possums out of your roof. We'll go through a few of those tips now. A lot of the information is on the National Parks and Wild Services website. So really there's no excuse for not knowing the rules.
I wonder how many people, though, have been fined up to $11,000 or been sent to prison for trapping possums.
Look, I couldn't tell you how many, but there certainly have been cases of, say, pest control companies who haven't followed the rules, and they have incurred significant fines.
Okay.
So, they do police it. If you get caught, it's there can be consequences.
So what's a suitable and allowable trap?
Well, look, I said the first thing to do before you try and get it out of the roof is you've actually got to provide the possum with an alternative home on your property.
On your property?
On your property. So you can't go and release them into the bush. There's pretty good evidence out there to suggest that when you relocate a possum, they actually have a pretty low survival rate. So that you're harming them, so you've got to release them on your property. So you've actually got to create what's like a natural possum home, which is like a typical of a hollow in a tree. So you've got to create a possum box, which you can either buy or build. And you've got to put that relatively close to the existing possum nest. So on a tree on your property, at least 4 to 5 metres off the ground to keep dogs and cats away. And that is the new home you're going to try and encourage the possum to get into.
So it's almost going to be a lifelong affair then, like it or not. That possum is going to have to stay on your place. If you're following it to the letter of the law, you've effectively got yourself a pet possum.
You do, but look, possums are territorial. So even if you took the possum out of your property, the chances are another one would move in. So by having one on your property, they're going to keep the other possums out of the area. And you talked about the fighting. That's where the possums are fighting over their territory. So, I think possums are a way of life. I think the skill is to keep them out of your house and if possible, off your roof.
Can you hear this collective sighs around New South Wales?
Exactly right. It's, I think everybody has experienced it. I certainly have had them in my roof and thundering across, and it's a big fright when they wake you up in the morning, but during the night. But you've really got to try and do it humanely and rehouse them on your property.
Right, so you can't stop another possum coming in and the challenging. By the sounds of things, you're just going to have to put up with the fighting.
Fighting, yes, but if you can have avoid them being on your roof, which you can do, but if you make sure that there are no overhanging branches over onto your roof, the chances of them being on your roof are dramatically reduced. So you can hopefully keep the fighting away from the house.
Okay, so getting them out of the roof into a suitably approved trap, which looks like what?
Well, okay, so you've got two options. One, you try and encourage or repel them out of the roof, and the second option is to actually trap them. So let's look at how to repel them out of the roof. Once the possum leaves the roof at dusk, because they do to go out looking for food, go up into the roof. Obviously, safety is key here, so make sure you're wearing the right sort of protective gear, masks, be aware of any electrical issues, and so you have to be very safe about doing this. But go into the roof, and what they don't like is bright lights. So what you want to try and do is set up a bright light in your roof space. And leave that on for at least 3 days and 3 nights. So when he comes back in the morning trying to get a nice sleep, the bright light will be pretty disturbing for them. If you couple that by putting some repellent smells in the roof space, and probably the best one to try is either camphor or mothballs. Don't mix the two because they can react, but choose one of those. The combination of the smell and the light quite often is enough for the possum to leave the roof space.
Okay. I'm feeling encouraged again. So there are ways to gently nudge them out, and they may well take up residence next door instead of at your place.
Yeah.
If you keep on hitting them with those things they don't like. So playing spotlight with the possum.
Yeah, so playing spotlight with them, and you see, when you're up there, if you can take some of their nest material, which you should be able to identify easily, it'd be an area of maybe insulation or leaves or twigs. If you can take some of that and put it into the possum box you've put outside, then you're obviously making their new potential home a bit more attractive as well. Right,
so camphor and mothballs, either separately or working in combination?
No, definitely not together.
Oh, not together?
Yeah, they do. It can react with each other.
Okay.
Just one or the other.
Right, making big note with exclamation mark. Not together. Don't put them together, or who knows what's going to happen there. So that's how many days? How long do you think?
The advice is you give it a go. You give it a go for 3 days.
Yep.
And if it hasn't worked by then, you may well have to trap the possum.
Okay, so let's look then at trapping.
So to trap a possum, you need a license, okay? Or you get a pest control company which has a license. Now, homeowners can get a license for free from the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Oh,
what does it involve? How do I get a license?
I think there's an application form on the website, or just give them a ring, and they'll take you through the process.
So it's not a terribly difficult thing to get a license?
No.
Okay.
No. But it only allows the homeowner to deal with possums on their property.
Right.
Okay. And then you have to follow the procedure that sort of we've outlined. So with the traps, you have to place that trap in the roof space after they've gone out. Do it again at dusk. And these are basically big metal cages, and you want to put some food in there, some fruit, for example. And the idea is that when they come back in the morning, the possum goes into the trap and is captured. Okay. Obviously, we don't want to harm the possum. What you then have to do is release the possum, take the trap out and release the possum the following dusk. So you can't do it during the day, you have to release it at night time again. And again, hopefully he goes into the new possum box which you've created.
Okay, so that being, we want to look after them, native animals, that's the least distressing way to do it, to release at dusk. Okay, and you can find these tips on the National Parks and Wildlife website as well?
Yes, exactly right.
All right, there's the possum. Is possum poo a big problem? Do they tend to do that near the nest, or do they go away and do that at night time?
They're pretty good at doing that everywhere.
Right then. Yes, it's a bit of a dirty problem, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I mean, possums do carry disease, so certainly when you're handling nest material, you make sure you've got gloves on.
What sort of diseases are prevalent in possums?
Well, they have been known to carry, obviously to carry fleas, but they have been known to carry TB, so tuberculosis, so you just obviously native animals, well, any animals, just need to have the necessary hygiene precautions.
Right. How fascinating. I'm learning a bit. How about you? It's 10:18, Sunday morning with Helen Clare. We're talking to Dr. Phil Ridley, who is an entomologist, and he's been working in the business of pests studying them for around 20 years. He's these days bugdoctormedia.com.au, and we're sapping him for some advice this morning. Got a couple of callers. How are you going?
Hello. Yeah, good.
Question about possums or another little pest?
It's a question actually about native mice, antechinus, and I wouldn't call them a pest. They're beautiful, but they, despite our best efforts, they keep going. We've got a raised house and enclosed area under the house, and they keep wanting to build their little nests in the electricity sub-box, which is not a good place.
Oh, no. What did you say was the name of the native mouse?
They're called antechinus.
Antechinus.
Yeah, they're a marsupial mouse.
Okay. How to get them out of the electricity box without doing some...
It's really, my question is really what are the deterrents for them, because despite our best efforts, they still keep getting in. So do the electronic sort of devices you can buy that emit ultrasonic noises, do they work, or does camphor work? What else can you do to deter them from coming in?
Great question, Dr. Ridley.
It is a good question. I mean, there has been very little research done on sort of repelling antechinus. I mean, they're obviously, they do look like a rat superficially, but they actually are insectivorous. They're carnivores.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you what works for repelling them. You've obviously tried to prevent them getting in there. I mean, they can get through very small gaps. So there's only sort of two tips I can only give in this situation is try and keep the vegetation immediately around the property very low or even clear, because they don't like going through open areas. And the other thing is to try and block up every hole with some of the foam fillers or sealants, so that there really is no hole for them to get through. I'm just not aware of anything that necessarily repels them. Certainly those electronic repellers, it's one of those things which you do see a lot of on the market, and to be honest, I've never seen any evidence to say that they work at all.
The jury seems to be out. If you look that up, you see some people who swear by them and others who say, look, nothing scientific. A little idea, Yolanda, that one Sunday morning, quite a few years ago now, we were talking about mice, and I can remember somebody called in and said peppermint oil is a surefire mouse repellent. So, mop your floors with a bit of peppermint oil and do that. Have you ever heard or come across that argument, Dr. Ridley? Has that got any scientific basis? Because we had quite a few people back then ringing in saying, absolutely, works a treat.
Look, you're right. I mean, you could probably get a list as long as your arm off the website of people saying various things have worked. Actually, the Victorian government have just done a small study on what does work as a repellent for possums. Now, I'm not sure they necessarily work for mice. But they've definitely shown that, say, camphor and mothballs do work. But other ones which are sort of said to work, like blood and bone, haven't come up as something as particularly effective.
What was that?
Blood and bone.
Oh, blood and bone.
Possums, where they're eating the fruit in your veggie patch. People say, putting blood and bone around it will stop them eating it. But their study suggests it doesn't really. But if something works for someone, who am I to say that it's not working in that particular instance? Sometimes the situation and the particular possum, they have variations in what they do and don't like. So there's certainly a chance. So for mice, odour can be quite effective, certainly in the short term. But what happens with a lot of these audio or olfactory deterrents is for some of them, they just get used to them.
Right.
And after a while, they just ignore them. And that's certainly the case for some of those ultrasonic repellers. In the laboratory, they show that they might work. Because
they're so adaptable, and that's why they're such good survivors, aren't they?
Yeah, it becomes background noise after a while, and I think I'll find
Okay, great question, Yolanda. Thank you very much, and good luck. You might like to let us know.
Yeah.
In Judy's case, it's moths that seem to be the big deal. What's happening, Judy?
Yes, I just want to know how deter moths getting into pure wool clothing or material of any sort, without using those mothballs.
What about the old potpourri or the lavender bag? That was what my grandma always used to do.
Yeah, and it was effective?
Well, supposedly that was very common. Have you not heard that before?
No, I haven't.
There were little gorgeously sewn up pouches, I suppose.
Of lavender in the yard. I can easily put fresh bunches in there.
Mind you, I'm not the entomologist. What's the real story, Dr. Ridley? Does that actually work with moths?
I don't know about the potpourri, but yeah, the mothballs do work, but obviously some people don't like the smell of them on their clothing.
No.
What about lavender, though? That was very common too.
Yeah, look, I can't say if it does or doesn't. I mean, any sort of those pungent sort of aromatic oils may have some deterrent effect, but at the end of the day, it's not the moths which do the eating; it's the caterpillars, the larvae do the eating. So if you do control the adults, which you can do by obviously spraying, you still got to take care of any of the larvae which may be chewing through your clothes. Now, it really is a sort of a top to bottom search your wardrobe and have a look to see what's going on. And one way to kill them without spraying your clothes is and this is a good thing for a lot of clothes pests, is to put your clothes into a black plastic bag and put them out in the sun.
Oh, I've got them in a black plastic bag, and I'll go and put them in the sun right now.
Yeah, because what will happen is that it will quickly get up to 60 or 70 degrees Celsius in that bag in the hot sun.
Yep.
And do that for an hour or two, it will kill any pest that's in there.
Fabulous.
Ideas now, Judy. I would love you to report back next Sunday, please.
Okay, will do.
One word of caution, if it's a delicate, like a silk or whatever, just be a bit more careful in that regard. But most clothes are fine to do that.
Right. That's easy. We've all got sunlight. Thanks for the call, Judy.
You.
Wow, you've got lots of ideas as well as questions, and I think we'll leave it there in the way of questions for now. But here are a couple more bits and pieces of input and some ideas from you. Peter from Coonabarabran has a solution for the mice in the power box problem. He says snake poo does the trick. Right. Well, that's not entirely easy to get your hands on, I wouldn't think. He's put some in his roof and had no mice problem since. Snake poo.
And look, makes sense. And maybe you go down to your local pet shop or your reptile handler and ask for the sweepings from the cage. I mean, because from an evolutionary point of view, obviously, it's a natural predator. Yeah, maybe that does have some merit worth trying.
There you go. The suggestion is anyone with a pet python can provide. You can help out your neighbours. You know, like giving them your excess produce. It's all part of living in a neighbourhood. Snakes might be a good topic for us on another day, I think, Dr. Ridley. Chris from Braidwood, or near Braidwood, says she's got a possible solution to the mice problem. She uses metal, puts metal on the walls. They can't walk on it. Works well for her. Annie from Kentucky says, yes, peppermint oil works a treat getting rid of mice. And Jenny from Charlestown, regarding possums, says she's got a light in the roof of her house. When she switches it on, the possums don't like it. And just as you said, Dr. Ridley, scares them off. It's a nice way to oust them gently. Thank you. I've learnt a lot this morning, particularly about the native antechinus, the rat-looking creature. Thank you very much for giving us a bit of your time and some of your ideas.
That's all right. You're welcome.
Dr. Phil Ridley, he's from bugdoctormedia.com.au. He's got about 20 years' experience in dealing with pests. He's got a PhD in entomology.